Good evening, boys and girls. Tonight's video is going to be about estimating quotients, which is just like anything else with estimation, we're going to round it first and then we're going to divide because quotient is just a fancy word for the answer to a division problem. Going to be one slight difference to this rather than when we were estimating with other numbers. So when we were estimating with other numbers, we were trying to get it to the nearest 5 or the nearest 10. With division, we're going to work with what are called compatible numbers, and those are numbers that just work well together. For instance, for example, 480 and 6 will work really well together. Why? Because 6 goes into 48 and then there's just a 0 after it. So, some clues: 2 is going to be compatible with any even number, 5 is going to be compatible with any other number that ends in 0 or 5, and then all your basic facts. So, for example, 3 would be compatible with 6, it would be compatible with 60, it would be compatible with 600, because it's going to go into 6 no matter what. As another example, something like 8 will go into 16, it'll be compatible with 16. It could go into 6,400 because 8 goes into 64. So you really just want to think about your basic multiplication facts. What is going to go into evenly? No matter what, we are still working with estimation, so we see a couple clue words that are going to help us. So this word problem says, Mr. B bought 342 cans of soda for 7 classes of students. About how many cans did each class get? So we see about right there is a clue word for estimation. We see 342 and 7, so we know that. The reason we know this is going to be division is because I have a large amount, 342 cans of soda, and I'm breaking it up, dividing it over 7 different classes of students. So we've got 342 as our number we're working with. And when I am estimating quotients, I pretty much just look at the first 2 digits. So that basically leaves me with 32 or 34. And I want to get 7 in there. So what I'm going to do is just like the steps for long division, if I can't remember my 7 tables, I'll list them. 7, 14, 21, 28, 35, 42. Alright, so I've got a couple there. Now I'm going to look at this and I'm going to see what's closest. 7 is very far away from 34. 14 is very far away from 34, so it's 21, so it's 28. 35 is pretty close. 42 is closer than some of these other ones, but it's too far off. So I would simply turn 34 into 35, and then I would just change that 2 into a 0. 350 is very close to 342. Alright, so now I've got my 350, and I still need to divide it to see about how much each class gets. So 7, just following my steps, can't go into 3, so then I go to the 5, so 35. How many times can 7 go into 35? I know it can go in 5 times. 7 times 5 is going to be 35. That will be 0. Bring down my 0. 7 can't go into 0 at all because nothing can go into 0, so that's a 5. And so 7 times 0 is 0. Subtract. Nothing left to bring down. No remainder. So we see that 342, if we actually divide that out, it comes to 40 something and a remainder. But if we want to ballpark it, estimate it, about 50 cans per class because 342 is close to 35. So that's one instance where I just look at the front 2 numbers, figure out which of my basic facts will get me closest to those front 2 numbers, and then I move on from there. So here's an example for you. It says a group of 5 friends went out to dinner at a Chinese palace and spent $237, which seems like a lot of money to spend at a Chinese restaurant, but I don't know, maybe they were very hungry. So what is close to the amount each spent? A couple different ways you can attack this. I want to see what you come up with. So try to estimate this one and come up with an answer. Alright, so let's work through this. So 237 is the number we're working with. If you see it right here, we see a 5, we see close to, each is going to be a clue word. So 237. If you followed my example from the last time, we see 23 basically is what I have underlined. So when we're listing out our 5s, we could do 5, 10, 15, 20, 25, 30. We'll stop there. So we see that 223 is in between 20 and 25. So we could do that as, we could change this into a 250. However, there's a couple other ways you could work through this because 5 is kind of special. We know that 5 is going to go into any number that ends in 0 or 5. So 237 could turn into 240, could also be estimated to be 235. You see, they're all going to be slightly different, but basically going to get to the same amount no matter what. I personally am going to stick with my 250 though. I just want to show you that there's a couple different ways you could estimate this. Alright, so like I said, I'm going to stick with my 250 just so I get my practice of picking the first two numbers. And I'm dividing that out by 5. How many times does 5 go into 25? Because I know it can't go into 2, so how many times does 5 go into 25? That would be 5 times. 5 times 5 is 25. Subtract that, bring down the next digit. Obviously 5 can't go into 0 because nothing can go into 0. Like I said on the last slide, 5 would go in 0 times. 5 times 0 is 0. Subtract, nothing left to bring down. So you see, by taking the first two digits and figuring out which basic fact would go into it, I was able to do and find some compatible numbers. So our final problem for you to bring back to school, it says if Connor slept for 630 minutes for 8 days, how much did he sleep? About how much did he sleep each day? Do the same thing, kind of look at the front two numbers, the front two digits, see what 8 is going to go into nicely around there. Solve it, bring it back to school, and I'll see you guys in the morning.